This moment right here wasn't just another messy breakup clip floating around the internet. This wasn't clout chasing, trolling, or a toxic back and forth her attention. What we witnessed was something much heavier, a real-time emotional collapse paired with a permanent decision. The second Chrisean sat down and began erasing Blueface's face from her skin, everything shifted. Not privately, not quietly, but painfully, publicly, and for good. This wasn't about ink, it was about identity, control, and the moment someone finally chooses themselves after being emotionally tied to someone for far too long. And what made this moment hit even harder was the reaction that followed, because Blueface wasn't confused, he wasn't reflective, and he definitely wasn't calm. He was furious, and that anger revealed way more than he probably intended. Today, we're breaking down why Chrisean's breakdown marked the end of an era, why cutting ties hit harder than any argument they've ever had, and how this single moment completely flipped the power dynamic in their relationship. And before we get into it, if you enjoyed deep dives into celebrity chaos, hidden power plays, and moments that change everything, make sure you hit subscribe and help me reach 500 subscribers. It takes one click and it really helps the channel grow. You can't understand why this moment broke Chrisean down unless you understand what that tattoo actually represented. When she first got Blueface's face tattooed on her cheek, it wasn't just shocking, it was extreme. People have seen names, initials, even matching symbols, but a full portrait on the face crosses a psychological line most people would never consider. The internet didn't know how to react. Some called it love, others called it obsession, and a lot of people felt deeply uncomfortable watching it unfold in real time. But there was one person who clearly benefited from it: Blueface. That tattoo didn't just make Chrisean look devoted, it made him look powerful. It sent a message that he was the center, the prize, the person someone would permanently alter their identity for. And for someone whose public image thrives on dominance, ego, and control, that kind of visibility meant everything. From that moment on, Chrisean wasn't just herself online anymore. Every headline, every clip, every interview tied her back to him. The tattoo locked her into a narrative where separation felt almost impossible, especially in the public eye. And that's why removing it was never going to be simple. It wasn't just erasing ink, it was undoing years of identity built around someone else. But the way she chose to remove it would make the story even heavier. When Chrisean finally decided to remove the tattoo, she didn't tease it, announce it, or build anticipation around it. There was no dramatic caption, no warning, no rollout designed for clicks. She just went live from a laser removal clinic, sitting in the chair with protective goggles on, looking nothing like the chaotic version of herself the internet had gotten used to. Almost immediately, something felt different. She wasn't loud, she wasn't joking, she looked nervous. Her hands were shaking, her voice cracked as she admitted she felt like she might cry. And it didn't feel performative, it felt uncomfortable, raw, and real. The kind of fear that shows up when you're about to let go of something that's been part of your identity for too long. When the technician asked if she wanted numbing cream, she said no. When they offered to start with a smaller tattoo first, she said no again. She told them to begin with the big one. That choice wasn't random, that was intention. No easing into it, no soft exit, just ripping the bandage off and facing the pain head on. And the second that laser touched her skin, everything spilled out. She screamed, cried, called on faith, and gripped hands through the pain. At one point, she said, "That's what I get." And that single line changed how people saw the entire moment. That wasn't drama, that was regret. Years of emotional weight releasing in real time while thousands of people watched. And for the first time, the internet didn't laugh. It felt something else entirely. Normally, a moment like that would have turned into instant jokes, memes, clips taken out of context, people calling her dramatic, unstable, or attention-hungry. That's been the pattern for years. But this time, something fell off, and the internet noticed. The comments weren't laughing, they weren't mocking, they were uncomfortable. People kept repeating the same thing over and over. This is hard to watch. This actually hurts. She's really going through something. And that reaction mattered more than anything else in this story, because the second the audience stopped clowning Chrisean and started empathizing with her, the power dynamic shifted. Sympathy replaced ridicule, and sympathy is dangerous when someone else is used to controlling the narrative. This wasn't a viral meltdown or a clout play. It was raw, unfiltered pain, and people could feel the difference immediately. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't being treated like a joke. She was being treated like a human. And the moment that happened, everything changed behind the scenes too. Because once the internet took her side, someone else lost control, and he felt it instantly. Blueface didn't stay quiet for long. Even though he tried to act like he wasn't paying attention, within hours he was posting, liking, and commenting in ways that made it obvious he was watching every move. Instead of letting her have that moment, he redirected attention back to himself, flaunting other women who also had his name tattooed, as if that somehow erased what was happening right in front of everyone. The message was clear: she's not special, I'm still in control. But the internet didn't buy it. True indifference doesn't show up this fast, this loud, and this often. His reaction wasn't calm, it was insecurity spilling into the public. For years, Chrisean being visibly attached to him boosted his image, made him look untouchable, and gave him leverage. But now she was publicly detaching in the most irreversible way possible. No yelling, no drama, just removal. And that kind of detachment doesn't bruise the ego, it threatens it. And what happened next would expose the irony that he couldn't spin away. The irony was impossible to ignore. While Chrisean was sitting in that clinic, erasing his face from her skin, Blueface still had her name tattooed on him, a permanent mark he got while locked up. Suddenly, the visual story flipped completely. She looked like someone reclaiming control, intentional and deliberate. He looked like someone still chained to the past, stuck in a narrative he could no longer control. And instead of addressing that contradiction, he avoided it. There was no clean explanation, no clever post that could erase the truth. One person was removing a permanent symbol of attachment, the other was still marked by it. That reversal was exactly why his reactions felt so extreme, because control wasn't quietly slipping away, it was being stripped in front of millions of people. And zooming out, the bigger picture of their relationship starts to reveal itself. From the very beginning, this relationship was never built to be normal. It thrived on chaos, attention, and content. Chrisean stood out immediately, emotional, unpredictable, reactive, and Blueface saw an opportunity. Every argument, every meltdown, every reconciliation became an episode for the audience. Every heartbreak was monetized. Millions of clicks, comments, and shares reinforced a cycle where drama and trauma were profitable. But here's the catch. Trauma performed in public doesn't disappear when the cameras stop. The damage lingers. Chrisean has openly shared how she's felt lost, how she's coped with heartbreak, and how the emotional weight of the relationship affected her mental health. Meanwhile, Blueface's focus has always been leverage, control, and influence. And this tattoo removal, it's the first act in this entire saga that wasn't about content or attention. It was about her reclaiming herself, silently, permanently. And in doing so, she made the loudest statement possible without saying a word. And Blueface couldn't stay silent, which made everything even messier. Once the tattoo was gone, Blueface couldn't help himself. He kept inserting himself back into the story, posting, commenting, reacting to every clip he could find. Every attempt to reassert control only made it clearer that he was rattled. What had once been entertaining chaos for the audience was starting to feel exhausting. Fans who had once defended him began asking questions. Why does he care so much? Why can't he let her move on? The more he reacted, the more obvious it became that he was threatened by her detachment. And this wasn't just about online attention. There was a child involved, mental health conversations happening in the background, and millions of people watching every move. Chrisean's vulnerability was genuine. She wasn't performing or seeking clicks, she was in pain. But instead of respecting that, Blueface turned it into another ego battle. And that's when the deeper patterns in their relationship began to emerge. Here's the deeper irony everyone started noticing. This wasn't just about a tattoo, it was about the entire imbalance in their relationship. Was Blueface furious because he still loved Chrisean, or was he raging because he lost control? Those are two very different things. Love would have looked quiet, reflective, maybe even supportive. It wouldn't have reacted by trying to prove dominance or reclaim a narrative. What we saw was the opposite. Ego seeped into every post, every comment, every subtle flex, and it was obvious in how he handled the ultimate contradiction. She removed his face permanently while he still wore her name. Every attempt to remind everyone who he was, what he meant, and that he was still on top only made the imbalance clearer. If the roles were reversed and he had removed her tattoo on live, she likely would have been loud, emotional, but encouraging. That difference tells the whole story. Detachment from him feels threatening, attachment feels empowering, and patterns like this don't just disappear, they shape every future move and how the audience interprets it. And when you zoom out, it's clear this isn't about one tattoo, it's about the structure of their entire relationship. For years, Chrisean being visibly attached to Blueface worked in his favor. Every meltdown, every tattoo, every emotional outburst reinforced the idea that he was the center of her world. That visibility gave him leverage, control over the narrative, control over perception, control over how millions saw their relationship. And that leverage wasn't private, it existed publicly. Every social media post, every viral clip, every headline cemented it. The moment she sat in that chair and started erasing his face, she wasn't just removing ink, she was undoing years of narrative, years of public memory, years of people linking her identity to his. For someone like Blueface who thrives on controlling perception, that's terrifying. The harder he tried to reassert himself online, the smaller he looked. Every post, every comment, every flex made it obvious she was moving on and he was trapped in the past. This tattoo removal wasn't just a personal act, it was a permanent power shift. And that brings us to the final question everyone is asking. Was Blueface reacting out of love, or was this purely about lost control? His furious response after the tattoo removal wasn't surprising, but it was revealing. Patterns don't lie. Attachment amplified his ego. Detachment triggered insecurity. Every loud post, every subtle flex, every comment exposed fear of losing control. Meanwhile, Chrisean's move was quiet, deliberate, and irreversible. She didn't rant, she didn't chase clout, she didn't publicly shame him. She simply removed him, and in doing so, she reclaimed her identity, her narrative, and her power. Sometimes the loudest statements come not from yelling or posting, but from growth that can't be undone. And that's what makes this moment so different from every other breakup or viral drama clip we've seen. This wasn't performance, this was evolution. Now here's the question for you. Do you think this is about love, or is it all ego? Before you answer, remember, if you enjoyed this breakdown and want more stories like this, make sure to hit subscribe and help me reach 500 subscribers. It's quick and it really helps the channel grow.